Hey, what's happening, everybody? My name is Haydn Adams with A Designer Who Codes. And today I want to give you my 7 reasons why I left WordPress. And I really haven't looked back since. If you look at my channel, I do have a few WordPress tutorials here and there, mostly based upon Adobe Animate, as a couple colleagues back in the day were asking me how to integrate a responsive Animate tutorial into WordPress. And so I did it from there. But in 2019, I really made the transition away from WordPress. 2018 was really my last year I did it. And 2020, I have not touched WordPress at all, aside from updating a client or two that I have left over still in WordPress. And so I wanted to share my 7 reasons why I left WordPress as a website designer / developer, and I haven't looked back since. And with that, let's get started. So I used to love WordPress, and this is not a knock in terms of what WordPress used to do. It was fantastic. From 2005 to 2015, WordPress was amazing. But over the last 3 years, from 2015 to 2018, I was just running into so many hurdles and headaches that I had to find a better solution. And so this is kind of the 7 reasons why I just couldn't take WordPress any longer. And people say WordPress is still great, and I still say the Model T was awesome during its time too. But I've moved on, and WordPress is no longer a viable option. So number 1, PHP code. All the PHP code did was essentially build components. I'd have a header, I'd have a footer. I really was working in just components anyways in PHP land, and so I was looking for a better solution than just the PHP code. And I needed a server to test the code. You can't run PHP by default on your computer. PHP is server-side code. And if you've done any kind of local host back in the day, we're talking years before we got in better solutions, it was really hard to set up localhost. I had to go through 6 or 7 different steps to make it run. It was doable, but it wasn't easy. And so building WordPress sites on my computer was very, very difficult, in part because it was PHP code. Number 2, making changes live. This was the part that really irritated me. If a client said, you know what, let's change our font or let's change XYZ design element, I kind of could do it by doing it off-site, writing my CSS code, implementing the class names off-site, but still for it to really fully functionally work, I'd have to make the changes live. Well, I could write it on CodePen or some templating site on my computer. If I wanted to see how it worked with all the existing CSS and the existing PHP, I'd have to make it live. And that would make me nervous because any change to the design was pretty much seen immediately. And I didn't like that because I wanted to make sure it looked flawless, because it would always happen when I would make a change or two to test it, it wouldn't work, and it would just be that time that the boss or the client would look at the site and call me and go, hey, and I'm like, whoa, slow down here, I'm making changes as we go. So yes, there are ways to make things change offline, but by default, it's fire and shoot and hope it works. So you had to be really good with your changes because they went live fast. Number 3, update and pray. That little blue button that said update now always scared me. Yes, updating, I would update my backup files and database, and we'll talk about backup files in a few. But was my template compatible with the latest version? In theory, yes. It always said it was, but at the end of the day, I was on the hook that it did. If it broke or something didn't install right in those 115,000 files I felt like WordPress was installing, if something didn't work right or somehow a server hiccup happened or anything went wrong, I was in trouble. And so there's no way, just like before making live changes, that update now button pushed everything live and you were stuck if anything broke. And it was also not just the part of the WordPress update, but was any of all of your, and let's admit it, people, everyone has like 20 to 30 I didn't have 106. I'm making exaggeration, but still, the 106 plugins, did they all work with the latest edition of WordPress? And literally hitting that update button, I'd have to almost fingers crossed. And even though a lot of plugins would tell me it was compatible, sometimes it wasn't. There was still hiccups and bugs to be had because you worked on a third-party WordPress plugin and a third-party other plugin and a third-party other plugin, and so you had updates that were not maintained by any of the same companies, and so you just hoped it would work and hoped it would work. And it was a plugin minefield. Was it easier to use a plugin than to do it yourself from scratch? I admit I did that. A lot of contact forms, I could just bring a contact form in versus writing form, input, selection, text area, and it would work. I would always say, did quick wins lead to big problems down the road? Yes. In fact, I was fixing a lot of colleague sites just last year because they had too many plugins. They used these to rely on their design elements. And as you can see in this video, Jetpack by WordPress.com is incompatible with your version of WordPress. I just pulled up an old staging server that I had from years ago. It's still sitting on my site. So to me, these plugin minefields, did they work? Did they not work? Just because there was 5 million active installations doesn't mean it was compatible with my version of WordPress. And so I had to navigate certain plugins that I thought would work, but they didn't always work as before, compatible with latest version. And so I was in trouble and relying upon third-party companies to get me through. And that was pretty much a house of cards, and I didn't like that. And backups were a pain. I'd have to establish backups on my third-party hosting companies, Bluehost, GoDaddy. I used HostGator for a short while, way back when. That's all in the past. And there's no knock on these companies. Just because I am talking about them in a negative way, they provided backups to me. They hosted my site for so many years. There was no negatives. It just is what it was. But there was no easy rollback if you messed up. I'd have to go into a backup file, copy and paste, and hope I found the problem. And I'd have to read a lot of PHP. Sometimes it was obvious, sometimes it was not obvious. Sometimes it was a simple CSS issue. Sometimes it was a SQL problem. And speaking of SQL, I'm not a SQL guy. I didn't get my degree in computer science. I have a degree in a Bachelor of Fine Arts. I learned about line, shape, texture, hierarchy of type, graphic design 101 translated to the web. I have an emphasis in new media. And I'm a designer developer. I think of myself as a pretty sophisticated coder, but I have a colleague who is a backend MySQL guru, and he spends all day and night working in SQL land. That's not me. And I don't know how SQL really operates. Yes, I've done database dumps. Yes, I've had to go fix a few wires here and there in a database. But to me, that made me nervous if the SQL server had a hiccup. How do I fix what I don't know? Was there something I didn't or I wasn't aware of in MySQL that I went into and I had to go fix a certain element to make a page work? There was a lot of moving pieces that I wasn't aware of. And to me, it made me uneasy that any one of these moving components could break, and working in this professional environment, I'd have to fix it. And that was uneasy and unsettling. And for MySQL, I had to find a better way around and off of MySQL. And I was also limited to who I could work with when it came to hosting. I was locked into MySQL and FTP SFTP, which stands for File Transfer Protocol, and Secure File Transfer Protocol. One-click WordPress setups, blah, 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 blah options to make it, quote, easier. It became a used car salesman lot. There were so many options, and I'm going, I just want a SQL server and a big hard drive in the sky. That's all I really want out of a website hosting company. But nowadays, there's fast servers or slow servers, there's enterprise, there's professional, there is charging you based upon how many views your WordPress site gets with the one clicks, and no SFTP, which I was like, well, that doesn't really get me anywhere I want to go. So all of these were drops in the bucket that I had to say, well, basically, if not WordPress, what do I use? And a colleague was like, here, take a look at Gatsby. And I went, what the, can I say bleep? I think I can say bleep on YouTube. But Gatsby JS at first was this unnerving world. It was React. And I'm going, I don't know React. I don't know how to do node modules and all these different pieces. Again, I'm a front-end developer, and I'm going, well, wait a second, what is this code going on? And if you look at my channel, and if you have a chance to look at the channel after this video, you'll see I have a ton of Gatsby videos. Why? Because Gatsby is amazing, and everything in WordPress that I didn't like, and those 7 reasons why, Gatsby fulfills them all. There is no MySQL. There is no PHP. There is headless CMS integration. And all headless basically says is you're not tied to one company, aka WordPress, for your content management system. You can go wherever you want. I personally happen to use Netlify CMS, which is a whole different video I'm going to make down the road. And if you can learn PHP, you can learn JSX or JavaScript. Updates to plugins, aka node modules, updated offline. I can use my computer to update them and test them to make sure they work. And I can revert back via GitHub. I was a long holdout on GitHub because I spent so much time in WordPress. And so if you're looking to continue in WordPress and you're having the same frustrations, I'd love to hear them. Maybe there's more reasons why. Did you leave WordPress? Is there a particular reason why? Throw it in the comments. This is more of a discussion point. Again, this was not to knock WordPress, but tell you there are more options out there, including Gatsby JS. And in the future, as this is my shameless self-plug, please subscribe to my channel because I'm going to make a video about the 7 reasons or so why I love Gatsby JS. So if you have left WordPress, I'd love to hear in the comments. If you are wanting to leave WordPress, I'd love to hear in the comments. And anything else that you find that WordPress was great but not great any longer, leave them in the comments. As always, I'm Haydn Adams with A Designer Who Codes, and I'll catch you in the next video. Ready to continue becoming a better web designer through code? Check out more of my videos through my channel, A Designer Who Codes. Thanks so much for watching.